Very good morning. Very good morning, everyone. I hope you all are doing good. Thank you so much. Happy Guru Purnima to all of you. Keep growing, keep learning. I wish you all the success in your life wherever you go. You might be in different fields, but I wish you luck, happiness, success all over the world, right? So let's begin with today's analysis. Today we will be covering the newspapers between your 17th to 21st July. Alright, so I have gone through all these newspapers and see, I am again and again repeating this thing that the budget related editorials, all the articles which are talking about the budget, that what should be there in the budget, what you should expect from the budget, all these I am skipping deliberately because then we will do the budget. So no repetition required, right? So today I have selected two editorials. Two editorials are there. First one is okay. So this is going to be very interesting. If I ask you, there has been a trend. We all know that the most exported category from India is your IT, isn't it? In services, if we talk about in services, right? So if I ask you this question, that which category of services amounts for the highest exports from the side of India, you would tell me IT services, isn't it? Yes or no? Yes, right? Now, why have I chosen this article? So there is this reason. There is new category of OBS, okay, OBS category, other business services category emerging. So this might be very useful for you in your answer writings, okay. You can write this new category. This can make your answer stand out. So let's discuss what the author says. So India's trade can now capitalize, upon this new category. So apart from IT services, we are expecting this category to grow further, and then India can capitalize upon this opportunity to increase employment, to raise more income, right? So this is the editorial. This is the editorial. And so there's this heading, a new export star. So the author has categorized this OBS category as a new export star, that it can be a new star in terms of India's exports, right? So let's discuss and try to understand why the author has termed this new category as a new export star. What is the importance, right? So the new category is other business services. You can write this term. OBS, other business services. You should write it down. Other business services. Now, the author says that other business services, OBS category, could become India's next major export powerhouse. India's next major export powerhouse by 2030, surpassing the software and IT services sector. So this is indeed important because software and IT services have dominated exports from India all over the world. You would agree with me, right? These two categories had dominated the Indian exports. Now there is something rising from India, giving them competition. So becomes very, very important for us, right? So the author only is saying that this category can outpace the export growth of the services as well as the IT sector. It is the new star quietly emerging on India's services export scene. So it is the new star emerging on India's services export scene. Now, what is this OBS? What all are the services which we classify as other business services, right? What all are the services? Let's try to understand. So, OBS encompasses services that support diverse business operations. Broadly speaking, this category OBS relates to all your services regularly and actively being integrated with the manufacturing domain. Are you getting my point? So you know, effectively right now manufacturing sector is not only manufacturing something, it is also very integratedly providing you services related to manufacturing. So all these services which are heavily and inseparably integrated with the manufacturing sector are under this OBS category. Are you getting my point? So what all are these services? Business consultancy. Any manufacturing unit can also have business consultancy, isn't it? So now it has become very difficult to define boundaries for what is manufacturing and what is services. Do you agree with me, right? So business consultancy, then your engineering and research and design, of course, R&D. Then they also cover services like advertising. So advertisement also comes under OBS category. Then your public relations, PR, public relations. Then your market research, logistics, accounting, auditing, architectural, legal services, and many others. Now I hope you must be able to understand what am I trying to say. What is this OBS, right? Other business services category. So all these new professional skills emerging, new professional services emerging all over the world, which are very readily integrated with your manufacturing dimension, is this new category. You would agree that apart from IT and software services being exported from India, this is the new category which holds growth prospects for us, isn't it? Have you understood this thing? What is this OBS category, everyone? So if you have understood this, let's move ahead with the analysis. Now, since you have the idea of what this category is, OBS has been classified by this author, you know, or say it is now being this new term in news, OBS, because traditionally what used to be the services did not include these new emerging dimensions. That's why we are trying to differentiate it from what existed to be the traditional category of services from today's one. That's why you have these new terminologies. Okay. Now, since we have understood what is it, let's try and understand its importance for India and how is it giving competition to the traditional IT and software sector. What is the potential for growth here? What is the potential for growth here? So the author has quoted some data. It is saying that in financial year 22-23, India exported software and IT services worth $150 billion, which is 20% almost of the global share. So India exported IT and software which comprised of the global trade share, with a 20% share in the global share, right? Now this OBS category, OBS worth rupees $80 billion, it shared a value of 4.2% of the global share. So it has a 4.2% share in the global value chain. Are you getting my point? Now, since it is not higher, it is lesser in comparison to 20%, but with the speed it is emerging as one of the largest exported services from India to countries, specifically US, it is a good indicator, right? So software and IT services have over half the share in India's service exports, while OBS constitutes about a quarter. Okay, so this is just a data to substantiate the arguments further, which will be coming into the discussion. Although software and IT is India's largest export sector globally, OBS trade is more than twice as large as the IT sector and is growing quickly. Now this is important, which you should know. So these categories trade from India's side is growing very quickly, as well as the trade. We are not talking only about the exports and its share in the global value chain. We are talking in terms of entire trade. So OBS trade is more than twice as large as the IT sector. Also, it is something which is growing very quickly, right? Then the author says that globally, services exports totaled almost $7.1 trillion with OBS at 1.8 trillion, which is 25.4%, and software and IT constituted only 10.7%. Now, this is the data which you should focus upon. This is the data. Let's read it again. So, the data says at the global level, overall services exports, which stood around $7.1 trillion, okay, the share of OBS into that export is almost 25.4%, while the share of IT and software in this entire $7.1 trillion services exports globally is 10.7% only. 10.7% only. Also, this is not something peculiar in case of India. India is one of the countries which are having this phenomena, which is witnessing this new trend where IT and software, the traditionally existing services sectors, highly exported services, are facing competition from these new professional skills. It is the global norm. It is happening globally because multinational companies, they are spreading these kind of services all over the world. Are you getting my point? Have you understood this thing? The potential for growth of this sector? Have you understood the importance of this sector in terms of figures we have also discussed? Right? Okay. Now moving ahead. Then also the author says that the growth of the software and IT might be moderated in coming years. So this is a new trend in India's trade scenario. Very, very important. Also, apart from rising OBS sector, the author highlights the fact future holds less for IT and software. Why the author is saying that? So this is a big remark indeed for a country like India, which is having surplus, trade surplus in the services category on the basis of these IT and software services exports only. So why this remark? Let's try and understand. So the growth of the software and IT sector might be moderated in coming years. The author is saying why? By artificial intelligence led disruptions and an over reliance of Indian exports on one country. So one dimension which you could relate to artificial intelligence is critical analysis as well. Here is that artificial intelligence is causing disruption, right? It is a good thing, but it has a very negative consequences which can emerge as well, isn't it? So there is a lot of debate going on around the possibility of pros and cons which will be imposed by artificial intelligence in each and every field. This is one of the negative consequences which can be witnessed, because effectively now when you have all these AI powered softwares, programs, right? So services exports in that term related to software and IT will get disrupted due to regular and continuous intervention of AI. You agree or not? Yes, right? Also, then the author is highlighting that our exports of services as well as software as well as IT are good, but then for export we are dependent on one country. So there is this one country which is importing heavily from us. So if there is any change in the direction of trade, that trade volume can be severely affected on your side. So Indian economy can have to bear the brunt in that case. Over reliance on one country. What is this over reliance? Over reliance is on US, because the United States accounts for over 70% of IT export earnings. Yes, whatever we are exporting, whatever we are earning due to export of these services, 70% is coming from our exports to United States. Right? So these are the reasons which you should know that such kind of over reliance can be detrimental for a trade related health or growth of an economy like Indian economy, which is one of the fastest emerging economies all over the world. right? So this is the significance we have discussed so far. Now moving ahead with the analysis. The question is, what is fueling the rise of these services? Why this fabric of Indian trade is changing? New threads are getting knitted into this new fabric. Why is this happening? So what is fueling all these things? Why Indian trade composition is changing? How should Indian economy tackle that, right? So what is fueling it? Author says servicification. This interesting term is here. You can use this term in your answers as well. That's why I have incorporated this. A very interesting term used by author. Servicification of manufacturing is happening. I would request all of you to write this down. Servicification of manufacturing. You can write these into your descriptives of any paper related to trade or manufacturing, Indian economy, trade, whatever the question is. It will be a fancy word. So servicification of manufacturing is happening. You have noted down, right? So servicification of manufacturing is fueling this OBS growth, according to the author. What is the servicification of manufacturing? Since in the very first slide only, I have explained you what is this OBS category, why is it emerging. So the category is basically when you are readily and actively integrating all these services with every stage of manufacturing. So if there is this company manufacturing certain automobiles, maybe cars, right, or any parts of the automobile categories, so it is not only manufacturing, it is also extending services related to it. Engineering services, consultancy services, the BPO kind of services, all these things. So manufacturing is heavily getting serviced, we can say that, right? Manufacturing all over the world, also in India, is heavily getting serviced. So this servicification of manufacturing is one of the reasons why this new category is getting this fuel. For example, a US based car manufacturing outsourcing engine design to an Indian based engineering firm. So these kind of outsourcing, all the services related to manufactured products are being outsourced, is one of the reason. Next reason is technological advances. What technological advances? Like cloud computing. So you have cloud, you can store anything on cloud nowadays, right? Then you have remote work tools. Someone sitting in India can work from anywhere. Here in India can work for any country located anywhere. So remote working tools are available, digital platforms are available, enable more services to be delivered globally, making them increasingly tradable. So services are becoming readily and increasingly tradable all over the world. That's why manufacturing is getting serviced heavily, we can say that, right? So apart from exporting manufactured goods, along with those goods, we are also exporting these services. Are you able to understand the broader dimension of it? Right? Also cost effectiveness. These multinational companies all over the world, also remember, MNCs, multinational companies, are known as the driver of globalization as well. These companies, MNCs, are responsible. They have contributed to globalization from all over the world. These are integrating the economies, right? So cost effectiveness is another driver. Companies are regularly searching for destinations with lower cost services to be provided. In case of India, you already know there is this huge middle class, very literate, fluent in English speaking. English is a lingua franca. What is a lingua franca? Lingua franca is a medium of common language medium which can be used to communicate all over the world, right? So given that population, it becomes cost effective from India to export such services, right? Next, about half of India's 80 billion OBS exports, they come from global capability centers. If you remember one of the editorials, we have discussed this term, global capability centers, We have discussed these terms. What are global capability centers? So global capability centers are another reason why India is witnessing such kind of different composition of India's trade, okay, with rest provided by thousands of firms and consultancies of all size. What is a global capability center? I have discussed this thing with you. Can anyone let me know what is a global capability center? Yes. What is a global capability center? Anyone? We have discussed this term in earlier editorials as well. So your global capability centers are these centers, almost India there are more than 1500 such centers across all your metropolitan cities. They are providing these kind of services. They are fueling the export of these kind of services, right? The outsourcing and all, consultancy services. So global world class facilities related to these professional services are being provided via these centers. So these are your global capability centers. These are some of the reasons what is fueling this new category of trade, of exports emerging for Indian trade. Have you understood so far? Yes, we are using the skills and professional skills particularly for exports. Right. Now we have understood the importance of this sector, right? We have tried and understand why is this growing, what are the reasons. Now the question is, important and relevant question is, how can India get benefit out of it? So can you tell me, you can relate all these dimensions, you can relate demographic dividend from it. So new middle class, new demographic, new working age population, the maximum working age population which you have, and you are not able to provide them with proper employment. So we can fill this mismatch. We can impart them vocational training related to these skills which are heavily in demand, so as India can export these services and then can capitalize upon it, can earn and then can reduce unemployment levels. You agree with me or not? But then what is the strategy we require to realize this potential? What is the strategy which we require for this? So talking in terms of a strategy, many small firms do OBS exports, but most engineering, research, management professionals in India are not aware of vast opportunities in these sectors. So first thing highlighted by the author is, there are many smaller firms. So you can target smaller firms. So it will have a trickle down effect to the lower strata as well. There are smaller firms operating in these type of services, right? There are smaller firms operating, but they are unable to tap this opportunity. They are unaware of these opportunities which are there. So we can train them, we can have training programs, schemes for them, and in that case Indian youth can be more job ready, whatever job. So this is the future OBS category. So you can relate this, this is up to you. How do you utilize this knowledge? You can relate this to your answers in unemployment, solution of unemployment. ट्रेडिशनल आंसर्स तो सभी लिखते हैं कि हमें जॉब मिसमैच है, ये करना है, वो करना है, राइट? कि ग्रेजुएशन डिग्री इज नॉट ओनली एनफ, यू शुड हैव स्किल्स. ऑल दीज बहुत पुराना पैटर्न हो गया of answering all these challenges. You can give these kind of solutions, that this is new emerging category of trade. India, Indian government requires to give training in these sectors so we can have the jobs of future for India, for Indian youth, right? You can relate these to all these problems, contemporary challenges going on for India as well at the global level. Yes, very innovative solution. So this is up to you, how do you utilize this knowledge, right, which we discuss in these editorials. I just give you hint so that you try and thinking like this, try connect all these dots. Now What is the 5-point plan given by the author for this? So there are certain solutions suggested by author for this thing, right? What are the solutions? Let's look. You can write these points, you can write them in any answer related to trade, unemployment, right? So these solutions can be useful. Let's see. So first thing which the author says is regulatory review. The author is saying that government should review domestic regulations. Government should review domestic regulations for each specialized service within OBS and align them with the global practices. First thing you need to ensure is that each service which is mentioned in this OBS category, what are the regulations for those services in your country? The regulations should be at par with the global practices. You should not have excessive rules and regulations, otherwise it would become difficult for new entrants to come into this field and reap the opportunity, right? So this is the first solution, regulatory review. Next thing, next highlighted by the author is, next solution is certification norms. Certification norms. What certification norms? So introduce certification standards based on global market requirements for the various professional skills, right? You should have a certification standard for all these services as well. Why certification standard? If you give them a certification standard which is in alignment with the global practices or global certifications, your services exports of all these categories of services mentioned here will align the global demand, and then you will be able to enter the new markets, isn't it? You will be able to enter the new markets. Next thing, set up associations. Like you have association for other industries, because when you have associations, you are able to bargain in the market. So the author is suggesting you set up some associations. What kind of associations? So author says this calls for establishment of associations for major OBS categories. These associations will help the members navigate regulatory challenges in India and global markets. These associations will be helpful in navigating the challenges which are there from the side of Indian regulation or Indian government as well as at the global level, right? Next thing, publish trade data. Trade related data to all these services should be regularly published by RBI or by any other concerned body, right? So detailed data sets on a specific OBS can significantly highlight extensive sectoral opportunities across various categories. Publishing data can help all those who are looking towards this sector get the exact situation of what is happening, and in that case, once you have the knowledge of what is happening, you can tap the opportunity, right? Is this clear to everyone? Any doubt? Any doubts? Clear? Okay. So moving on to other set of solutions. Also, one extra solution remaining here which we need to discuss is trade negotiations. Trade negotiations. During trade negotiations, India may push for low market access restrictions imposed by some countries. So, we have discussed this thing in previous editorials as well. One of the challenges which Indian goods face in the international market is what? Is that we are unable to meet certain standards, right? Global standards. These are the certification things which will provide the solution. Also, easy access to the markets of all these major advanced economies and emerging economies should be negotiated for by Indian diplomats, right? In that case, we will have easy access to these markets. Then only we can capitalize upon this opportunity. At the end, the author says India's OBS sector growth will not only boost the economy, will not only boost the economy but also create millions of high quality jobs or entrepreneurial opportunities. So entrepreneurship can rise due to this sector. Startup India, Stand Up India like programs can get fuel from these kind of schemes. Made in India as well, promoting, so Viksit Bharat kind of initiatives. If you want to have all these initiatives in alignment with each other, you have to tap the opportunity of this sector. This will definitely be a win-win situation for Indian economy. So you can reduce unemployment rates, you can capitalize upon the demographic dividend phase going in for India. Then you can increase your national income or GDP. You can stand yourself, you can make yourself as active contributor to global value chains. All these solutions can be there. So this was this first editorial which we have discussed. Have you understood the importance of this sector? I hope this will be useful for you. You will be able to utilize all this information in some of your answers at least, right? Any doubts from this analysis, or shall we move ahead with the next article? All clear? All right. Now, next article is also very interesting, and it is directly related to one of your topics mentioned in the syllabus, financial inclusion, right? So that's why I've chosen this. It is directly related to financial inclusion. You can use the insights of this next editorial which we are going to discuss in your financial inclusion answers, challenges, critical analysis, whatever they ask, any scheme related to it, anything which asks about what lacks, what are the challenges, why India is lagging behind in terms of financial inclusion, all these things can be incorporated. So this has been taken from your Mint. The date of this is, I think, 17th July, right? So you can go and read this article. Now, what is the heading? Heading is, why have I given this title? I'll come back to this title after the analysis of the editorial, right? So the title, as you can see, is formal versus informal credit, or formal along with informal credit. This will be a very insightful session for you. Before starting the analysis, I want you to answer me this one question. What is the question? Question is, have you heard this debate that in India there is more of formal credit as compared to informal credit? Also, we need to increase formal credit in comparison of informal credit. Then only when we talk about financial inclusion, so financial inclusion can be expanded in each and every pocket of Indian society. Have you heard this thing? Yes or no? Formal credit versus informal credit. This has been our mindset for a long period of time, that formal credit is kept above informal credit, right? Isn't it? What is formal credit and informal one? So, formal credit are these institutional credit like banking channels and all, financial institutions. Okay. Now, this article will demystify this thing. It will burst this myth. So according to the author, that this is a myth that we can either choose formal, yes, credit or informal credit. The author is emphasizing that they can go along. If you have to have financial inclusion in India, then author highlights what are the reasons for this, what is the data. So it will be useful in understanding new dimension of financial inclusion in India. All right, so ready for the discussion? Now let's see. Fresh credit decisioning ideas needed for final push towards financial inclusion. Let's see what is the author saying. First thing, first we need to give answer to this question, are we included financially? So how much is the status of financial inclusion in India, right? So author has a data to tell you first. The data is almost for 2 decades, India has doubled down on the policy prescription of providing financial last mile access to its rural and poor citizens. That is true. We have been continuously trying to push for last mile delivery of financial inclusion related services, right? Financial inclusion has been at the forefront for Indian government as well as for the central bank or RBI. But has the effort succeeded? This is the question mark. Do we have success in this field? So now let's try to answer. Financial institutions the author is talking about first. Okay, financial institutions, they have expanded manifold their credit volumes to poor households. So if you look upon answer to this question, has the effort succeeded, would depend on whom are you asking this question. Are you getting my point? Whom are you asking this question to? Are you asking this question to the financial institutions? Then it would be a big yes. Why? All your financial institutions, including your banks as well as non-banking financial companies, they have expanded credit extension or their gross advances many folds, right? Many folds. So yes, from their point of view, it is a success, right? To poor households as well. So you see this priority lending efforts continuously going on from the government of India side as well as from the RBI side. We regularly have these norms and regulations related to priority sector lending, right? For small finance banks, regional rural banks, all these institutions. So this is a big yes in the last decade, and still the business remains so profitable that the sector continues to attract new entrants. Still Indian financial institutions are able to provide proper volumes of credit to all these poor households as well. Okay, whatever households according to the data come under the category of poverty, right? However, then what is the problem? The problem is in the non-credit domains, financial inclusion remains very, behind. So financial inclusion in the credit domain is not a cause of concern for India. So you can write these things, that in proper financial credit, in credit domain, financial inclusion is blooming. That's good. But what about the non-credit domains? So what are these domains? Non-credit domains, these are like health insurances, right? Investment products, whatever investment portfolios you have, investment options you have, investment products you have, retirement products which you have, inclusion record has been very less cheerful in all these categories. Is this clear to everyone? Right? So now what is the concern? You have this new question in financial inclusion topic. Is it the credit related financial inclusion a cause of worry for India, or is it the non-credit products which are creating this worry for India? So non-credit products like insurances, investment products, retirement products. This is something which India needs to work upon, right? Okay. So presently we need to diversify our schemes, our targeted deliveries to these sectors. Are you getting my point? Now let's see further what author says. Then author says, this is official data, 2021 All India Debt and Investment Survey. All India Debt and Investment Survey data is there. So you have All India Debt and Investment Survey data 2021. This is, this survey is done by your NSO under MOSPI. Okay, NSO. So this official data suggests that between 2013 and 2019, rural households, if you talk about particularly rural households in India increased their reliance on formal sources of credit by 10 percentage points. So this rural-urban divide is getting reduced with time, right? Rural households, their reliance on formal credit has increased almost by 10 percentage points between 2013-2019. But at the same time, the informal sources they have continued to constitute a full 34% of the rural households' outstanding debt. So what do you get from these two paragraphs? That in spite of rising reliance on formal sources of credit for rural households, the informal credit is also growing. So first answer to your question related to whether formal versus informal is going to be effective for India, or are we going to sustain with formal along with the informal credit? So here you get the first clue to this question, isn't it? This is the first clue. So you see, in spite of rise in the choice for formal credit, rural households are still dependent on the informal one. So if you need to have financial inclusion, you have to be wary of this fact that do not separate formal and informal credit availability. If you consider them as complementing each other, it would be far better way of going ahead with financial inclusion. Yes, formal along with informal. Okay, now why this reason? Why is it there that formal credit also growing, but then share in informal is not reducing? Why? What are the reasons? So the author says that first reason is perhaps access to formal credit remains a significant issue. Why this increase in the formal credit access is less? So first answer is that perhaps the access to formal credit remains a significant issue. Why? Second is perhaps formal and informal credit are not substitutes but are complements to each other for these people. A lot of share of population is there in India which is not considering this formal versus informal credit as substitute to each other. They are considering it as complementary to each other, right? Also, we will emphasize more on this point, that why is it more difficult for rural households to access this thing, right? So explaining this point, why access to formal credit is difficult for the rural households or to several other sectors of Indian society, the author explains it is important to recognize that the financial lives of the poor are radically different from those of the middle and high income segments of the population. So we need to try to understand that the financial behavior, availability of financial products is different to poor people, to poor category people in comparison to higher income one. Lesser income one are facing new challenges, right? What is the thing? Many poor households, they experience episodic poverty, right? They experience episodic poverty. It is which we also call as transient poverty in comparison to chronic poverty. So it is not that there is household who is always under poverty. Sometimes they might come out of the poverty line depending on the work conditions and income they are getting, and sometimes they might be under the poverty line. Getting my point? So this transient nature of poverty is one of the reasons, right? Now, why is this a cause of concern? Transient poverty. Transient poverty, you can write this term down, transient versus chronic. Chronic is when you are for a very longer period of time under poverty or permanently poor, right? Transient is when there are phases of poverty for a particular family. You are not always under poverty line. then the obvious implication of this thing is that the poor suffer from cash flow. So if you are transiently poor, you are sometimes poor, you are sometimes not poor, then your cash flow gets affected, isn't it? Availability of cash with you. And cash flow for you is only a cash flow, but for formal institutions who are trying to extend credit to you, it is a parameter of assessing your credibility. Yes or no? So for them, it is a parameter of assessing your credibility. Here comes the entire challenge. I hope you are understanding what am I hinting, right? What hint am I giving to you? So this cash flow availability, which is irregular for such a huge strata of society, this irregularity gets translated as lesser credibility, higher risk of servicing your loan when the financial institutes assess your income statements, isn't it? This is a challenge why formal credit in India is inaccessible to a lot of people. We can connect this thing to transient poverty as well. Now, so this kind of thing, the obvious implication that the poor suffers from the cash flow deficits almost routinely, and therefore much of their borrowing is for consumption smoothing. Yes. Also, much of their borrowing is for consumption purposes. And when you borrow for consumption purposes, your chances of returning back the loan, servicing the loan, it gets reduced. Yes or no? Right? Next thing. Regulatory mandates for formal institutions, whatever regulatory norms are there set by RBI, other related regulators of different sectors, they require them to disperse credit on the basis of income assessments only. So when they do your income assessment, this irregularity in the cash flow, it gets reflected, and hence you are not able to get the loan. Simple, right? Yet it is cash flow that is proper input variable here. So basically this cash flow becomes a hurdle, right? It means that even as formal credit becomes available, the poor do not stop relying on informal sources. Now you have the proper answer. So this is not the availability which is getting affected. The regulatory mandates of assessing the income only is working as a hurdle in this process of financial inclusion. So you have this new dimension. That is the reason, despite keeping on fighting for access to formal credits, these poor stratas of your society, they are not reducing their reliance on informal credit sources. Is it clear? Right? Then it means that credit disbursements are wrongly calibrated to the borrower's requirements, since the condition for borrowing, the cash flow, is not aligned with the condition for lending, which is income sufficiency at a low frequency. So what is the problem? That the condition for borrowing, cash flow, what is the condition for borrowing? How much cash flow do you have? And the condition for lending is income sufficiency. They are contrasting with each other. Can we do something about that? That would require a new solution. Are you getting my point? So this is a new challenge for financial inclusion in India. Cash flow and income sufficiency, one condition for the borrower, one condition for the lender, are in contrast to each other for these poor people, particularly, or rural households. Not for everyone, right? Or people related to informal sectors of job. They do not have, say, gig workers as well, daily wage workers, right? You can write this argument as in the critical analysis of informal or organized and unorganized sector of jobs as well, right? So what to do? What are the concluding remarks by the author? the author then suggests that, as such, this kind of mismatch can quickly invite the threat of delinquency. So I have told you this term delinquency. What is this, right? Any pending payments. So these kind of threats are there, which then lead to NPA as well, inspiring once again a reliance on the informal sources. That's why people are still relying on the informal sources for credit. In other words, formal and informal debt become complements. They do not substitute each other. We have to accept that fact and then go along in the process of financial inclusion. Right? Agree with this thing? Also, last mile access, access to all these people need to be prioritized, but also new forms of credit decisioning. So the solution given by the author is to this entire picture, entire discussion which we have had, new forms of credit decisioning, not provisioning. It is not provisioning, remember, okay? This is decisioning. On what basis are you deciding whom to lend, how much to lend, at which interest rate to lend, right? Need to be encouraged to protect the borrower from falling into a debt spiral. So this gap between income requirement and the irregular cash flow, this contrasting reality for a lot of people in India, we can do something about this so that they can get formal credit, right? Then, therefore, last mile access and customer protection should be simultaneous future policy priorities in the financial inclusion domain. Finally, the author says that customer protection as well as last mile access should be the policy priorities for future, right? Along with last mile access, you have to focus on the customer protection as well. So this is the thing. Now you have new set of dimensions when you study about financial inclusion, that only availability of formal credit is not giving the solution. Are you getting my point? There are a lot of people who are not able to meet that income requirement which the regulation mandates these institutions to implement. So we need to do something in this regard. I hope you have understood this article. And now what is your take? It should be informal credit versus formal, or informal along with formal. So you have this new dimension of financial inclusion today. This is your take from today's analysis. Yes? Any opinions or suggestions? Anyone? All right. So let's wind this up. I hope this is useful for you. We have covered the important news which are there. Also, one thing which I need to tell you, there is this Finance Commission related article, right? So two articles were there. In one was there in the Hindu and one was in other newspaper. I have not incorporated it into the analysis because I'll take up a separate class. I'll take a separate class for financial for Finance Commission, right? Finance Commission is one of the very important topics for you. There have been questions asked in phase 2 as well, right? So Finance Commission, on Finance Commission, the statutory provisions, and then what are the criterias of what is vertical devolution, what is horizontal devolution, what are the criterias of horizontal devolutions, what has been added in comparison to 13, 14, 15 Finance Commission, all this will be clear to you, right? So we will do a separate class on Finance Commission. More emphasis on credit decisioning should be done so as to make formal credit more sustainable along with, yes, this is the take which you have, right? All right then. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next analysis, in the next editorial analysis which we have. Till then, keep on reading, keep on studying. Thank you for being interactive for such a long period of time, and I wish you all the success in your life, in your entire life, in whatever field you go, you become successful, happy, you have a blissful life on this today's auspicious day of Guru Purnima, right? So all my blessings to all of you. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next class. Have a good day.